Today we are going to talk about Vantage. Vantage is a module in Imaris to make different type of plots using the analyzed data. Okay. So when you use Vantage to make a plot, it looks like this. These are the various type of plot made in Vantage. So you can make a very simple gallery plot to compare the different statistics in one object. For example, in this plot, the user is comparing the sphericity of the cell. So you can make a very easy to understand the gallery with all the objects. And of course, you can still show the numbers you use to for the statistic. So, you know, one eye-catching gallery plot with the numbers to justify. So it will be very impressive. And if you have time-lapse data, analyzed time-lapse data, you can also make this kind of time-lapse plot using the Vantage. Also, if you have different images, you want to compare a specific statistic, you can also put different images in the Vantage and compare the statistic, either in the Scatterplot or just a simple box plot. Okay. So today's learning objective, first from the basic part, how to make different plots using Vantage, including the box plot, Galleryplot, Scatterplot, time-lapse plot. Also, how to compare the result from a different object in one image, as well as from different images. Okay, so let's just start in the Imaris. And for the box plot is for comparison of the single statistic in one image or different images. So if I can show you, maybe this one. Okay, so for this image, or maybe we used this before, but I have a different standing and one specific component I want to understand is the red protein, maybe intensity. Is there any difference between the difference in intensity between each, like these proteins? So I can make, like we introduced before, we can use a spot to create an object based on the channel we want to understand. So let me quickly create a spot object for the red channel, 3, 5, maybe 1. Okay, like this, and more next. Okay, so I have these objects represented by red channel. So we introduced before, if you want to know the statistic, and you can export from here the intensity mean of channel 1, for example. You can export from here, and of course you can make the plot of these numbers in Excel or other software. But in Imaris, if you just go to the Vantage here, and if you go to 1D view here, so you can see this is the Vantage interface. And once we are in the 1D view menu or function, here on the left, you can select the object you want to use to make this 1D plot. Okay, so here in the button here, you just choose one of the statistics you want to make this box plot. So for example, if we are interested in the intensity mean, want to see is there any specific pattern in the intensity of the red channel, then we can just select this statistic, and you will be able to see this box plot using the current object as a statistic and show you the minimum, maximum, median, Q1, Q3, 25, 75%, the standard box plot. And of course, you can export this table to the different format as well. And for this plot, you can make a snapshot. Also in the filter tab here, we can further filter this data using the same or different statistic. For example, if you want to remove the extreme if you want to remove the low and high range of data, you just want to keep the middle, then you can do it here by changing this threshold like this. Okay, so that will be sometimes useful if you want to keep a consistent statistic. And here we have some options to change the frame settings. All the options are here, so it's not a lot of options, but you have some flexibilities in the color, line width, and the grid, etc. If you need more options, perhaps you will need to export this data and make the plot in other professional softwares. But in Imaris, we do have these options. And for the draw style here, you can see we have different draw style as well. So you can see if there is one you like to use. Okay, so that is the very basic box plot. Then if you want to compare the data from same image but different object, for example, we have another channel is a white channel, and we want to compare whether there is a difference in the size or in the intensity between the red and the white channel object, then we can also do that in the Vantage. So in that case, we need to create another object for our white channel, and we are using also the different spot sizes and the settings like this. So here, we can use the same settings, but probably with a different size. Like this. Okay. So now we have this white object and the red object. Then in the Vantage, we will be able to include the another object here, and we can again select one of the statistic to see if there is any difference between these two objects. And if you want to change the color of this data points, you can click this color panel and to choose your preferred colors for each object, like this. Okay, and still you can do the filter again here. Okay, so that is a very basic box plot and how to compare the objects. Okay. Okay, so another example I want to show you is maybe the Galleryplot. So again, in this demo image, we have a different object, including these nerve cell nuclei and the ring canals, border cells, and also these posterior nuclei. Okay. So we have a lot of things we can do in the Vantage. So one example, for example, we want to compare the separosity of this nurse cell nuclei. So if you go to this surface, you can check the statistic here and go to separosity. You have different separosities. Then in Vantage, okay, if you go to the object view here, then we can create the different type of plots based on our analyzed object. So here, if you want to create a different scatter plot or gallery plot, you have to choose. This is like a creation wizard, so you have to choose the object you want to use. So for example, here, I don't want to do the spots. I want to do this nurse cell nuclei here, and another yolk. So just this cell nuclei and go to next. So in this step, we will be able to choose what type of plot we want to make. So here to compare the different separosities, so we go to the Galleryplot. So you see we have XYZ plot, which is basically using the XYZ position and another dimension like scale or color for your preferred statistic. And here we use the real object as the data point. So I want to make gallery plot with the different color coding for the, maybe you can use, if you are interested in severity, maybe you can use severity and sort by severity as well, like this. Okay, so now you can see there are different severosities and color coded based on the severity as well. Or you can color code in different statistic if you like. Okay, so if you like, you can also change the column and the rows. So finish. Okay, so here, after the Vantage plot is done, then you have also the settings here you can change. For example, you can go to the View tab, and there is a way to change the orientation of the object, like this. So just find the best angle for you to take a snapshot. Also, you can edit the content. Furthermore, like you can change the statistic here again, and also you can change the scale for the color coding, and also the different settings here. And also there is a frame, again, you can change the frame. So here you can see we have the severity numbers here, and you can export to make a table. And again, you can have this snapshot to compare. Okay, so that is the basic gallery plot you can use. All right, so next will be the scatter plot and the time plot. Scatter plot and the time plot, maybe for the scatter plot, I will try to use another images. For example, here I have the surface. Okay. Okay, so let's say if I want to compare if there is any relationship between the expression of this green channel to the shape of these cells. So I can try to use the Vantage to compare as well. But first, again, we need to make the object based on this green channels. So I'm using the surface because I want to compare maybe is there any relationship between the sphericity or ellipticity to the intensity of this green channel. In that case, I use a surface. So here, let me try to do some segmentation. 17, okay. 15. Okay. Please. Okay, let's say I have this surface I have segmented from the background and the other objects. Then here, if I go to Vantage, and here again, we go to the object view, and I'm using the surface one, and I want to make a scatter plot. Use maybe the very easy, simple 2D with color. 2D with color. So you can see here, if I choose 2D with color, then I can assign a different statistic for each axis. So for example, if I'm interested in the maybe ellipticity, and let's make it easier, maybe the sphericity with the intensity mean of channel 1, like this. So now, oh, here, sphericity. Okay, and the color coded by sphericity maybe, or maybe the intensity is easier to understand, like this, right? So finish. So now you can have a very quick view or understanding of these two statistics, whether there is a positive relationship or negative relationship, or it's just a random relationship between these two statistics you assign to this plot. And this is the interactive plot. So if you find some interesting object here, for example, maybe they are not well separated, then you can select them in the plot. And then once you go back to surface view, they will be also selected. Then here, for example, if you think this should be the separated, then you can go to the edit tab and cut surface like this. Okay, so now when you go back to the Vantage plot, it will update. And also here you have the statistic for each axis. So this is also a very useful tool if you want to export the different statistics in the same table. So for example, we have a sphericity, intensity mean here in the same table, so you can export. If you export it from the surface statistic, you can only export one at a time, or export everything in different tab, but not in the same table. So this is another useful way of the Vantage statistic here. All right, so that is the Scatterplot. And if you have a time-lapse data, for example, this one we already analyzed. This time-lapse data we're familiar with and we already track. So here in the statistic, you can see a lot of tracking and different speed, etc. Then in Vantage, we can also make this time-lapse plot if you like. So here we use the spot 2, and you can see here if I have a tracked object, then I can select different category, so including the points, the category spots, or the tracks. So for the tracks, it is the whole tracks, so it does not include the time plot. So if you want to make a time plot, you have to select the spot for your category. So if you have a surface object and the track and tracked, you will have a surface and the track here. So just make sure you select the surface or spot if you want to make the time plot. So here, if I select the time plot, I can, so of course the X will be the time, and the Y can be any statistic you want to measure, for example, intensity mean. So it shows you the intensity mean along with the change of intensity mean with time. So if I have many objects, maybe it is not easy to see. So let me finish it first. So usually to make this time plot for the time lapse data, maybe in the surface view, you want to filter the ones you are interested first and make a different group. So for example, if I want to just plot the ones with long track lengths. Okay, so for example, these 4, or even just a few, maybe 2, duplicate. Okay, so these 2 are the ones with the long track lengths. If I display the 4 tracks like this, so I want to plot based on this one. So select it. Okay, so if I go to the Vantage, I can delete this one and then make a new one. So this time I want to display only the selected. Right here, again, we choose spot, make the time plot. And I'm using intensity mean. And color coded by maybe speed or just the intensity mean here. Right, then finish. And here we can change the size of this sphere to make it smaller, or even just a center point like this. And when I play it, you can see the difference. So this shows you the range as well, maximum, minimum, and the mean, etc. Okay, so you also have the options to change the settings of the plot here. Right, you can tell, or 4 tracks, or turn off. Okay, so you can recode this animation using this button, and you can export this table as well for the spreadsheet format. Okay, so these are the same as the other plot type, but here you can change. So once you finish the plot configuration in here, again, you can further still change the statistic you want to compare. So that is quite flexible. And here are the same. So this is the timeless plot. Okay, so the last one will be compare the different images. Okay, so in the batch session, we briefly mentioned how to compare already. So for example, if you have multiple images, then you want to compare the result either after batch. So after batch, you have a very easy, just make a new plot, or you manually made some segmentation and then you want to compare the result. So you just go in here for each image. So let me quickly make the service, for example, using the green channel. Three. Okay, I'm just going to use these settings. Okay, finish. Okay, let me store this one, service one. All right, so I save this data, go to here. I do another service using the same settings, like this. So I name it service 2. To compare the result in different images, it's very important to have a different object names for each image. So for example, I have a service 1 for the first image and a service 2 for second image here. Okay, so now of course you can do here and filter again based on the volume to remove the small ones. Okay, duplicate. So maybe I keep here. Service 2 selected, that's fine. So I save. Okay, so I go back to Arena. And if you don't have the batch, so you just have some images with the service you segmented or spot with segmented. So you just multi-select these images you want to compare. So I hold the control key and multi-select this, select these both images, so I can have a new plot here. Here you can see we have all the objects in these two images. So the ones I want to compare, maybe service 1 with the service 2 selection, then we can have it here in the 1D view. Of course, you can do this compare. There is maybe a small bug here, like here. Okay, so I can select these two and I can compare. These are from different images, so I can compare different images as well. Also in the object view, I can choose these two objects. Then I can use it for the Scatterplot if I want. If I want to compare maybe the volume versus the distance from origin, or distance from origin, to see if there is any difference, to see if there is a difference between these two groups, okay? Or intensity mean, something like that. Okay, so this is what we can do also in Imaris to compare the different objects from the different groups. Okay, so here maybe I can do, not sure if I can color code based on, no. Okay, I think it's possible to configure it based on the, or maybe without color, yes. So maybe I don't want the color, so I can now have an easy, display of these two groups. Okay. Yeah, so now it's in the arena, from the arena, so I cannot go back to service. So here, now I can compare these two groups using these new plot functions. All right, so I think that is what I want to introduce about the Vantage today.